Welcome to Brick by Brick with Father Brooke. This month's question: how do I talk to my child about the significance of the sign of the cross when we pray, and why we have to even make the sign of the cross when we pray? There's two ways I want to go about answering this great question about the relationship between the sign of the cross and prayer. The first thing to understand is that when we make the sign of the cross, we are reminding ourselves that we belong to God. A way of explaining that maybe to your child would be to think about all the things in your home that you label. Right? Maybe if you have lots of kids, you label certain items that belong to one child or to the other so that they don't fight about it or something like that. Or you label something for the whole family, or maybe you even get something special monogrammed, and you have them carved or stitched in their initials or the name of the child. In that way, we're doing the same thing when we make the sign of the cross. It's like we're stitching or we're carving onto our bodies, in a sense, this reminder that we belong to God. And the Catechism gives us 3 times, actually, when we are supposed to make the sign of the cross. The first is at the beginning of the day. The second, when we begin prayer, and the third, it says activities, which is a little bit generic, but I think we could think of it this way. We begin the day with the sign of the cross as a way of offering that day, whatever might come that day, to God. We begin prayer, obviously, with the sign of the cross, because it's a way of dedicating this specific time, claiming this specific time for prayer, for God. And then also activities. I think it's a way we can see or remind ourselves that it's not about our glory or what great we're doing. You think about when athletes make the sign of the cross. Hopefully we're doing that as a way of reminding ourselves that we belong to God, and so what we do is for His greater glory. The second approach to answering this question is not just that we are claimed by God or we're labeling ourselves as belonging to God. The second way is that it's also a way of addressing God. So when you want to talk to your children about it, point out to them that, when they speak to their teacher, we're getting ready to go back to school soon, they address their teacher in a certain way, Miss or Mr. or Mrs. Right? When they talk to a priest, we refer to them, call them Father. And there's different ways we speak to various people in our lives. And so when we make the sign of the cross, it's a way of beginning or addressing our prayer to God. The other advantage of that is that it helps us to kind of separate whatever else is going on, to separate this special moment and to dedicate it to God. And by addressing God with the sign of the cross, it gives us a greater deal of focus in our prayer. So again, by making the sign of the cross when we pray, we are labeling ourselves as belonging to God, and we are addressing God in focusing our prayer. And now for the brick. The simple brick is simply, if we want to learn about making the sign of the cross and praying, is to pray. More specifically, perhaps, you might encourage your child or your children to make the sign of the cross when they get up in the morning. If they're still at a certain age where you go into their room to wake them up and you want to make sure that they're awake, maybe instead of flashing the lights on and off until they get out of bed, or once you've done that, I should say, encourage to make the sign of them to make the sign of the cross, or make the sign of the cross with them to help them dedicate their day. And if nothing else, you'll get them moving and talking as well. And secondly, perhaps just inviting your children to pray. When you gather to pray as a family before meals or in other special moments throughout the day, to invite your children to lead that prayer so that they can continue to learn about claiming themselves for God through the sign of the cross and addressing God in our prayer with the same sign of the cross. So, if you have any more questions for future Brick by Brick with Father Brooke, feel free to send me a message or on social media or leave a comment below. Thank you very much.